Tuesday, June 8th, 2022 at 6:00 p.m. Would you call the roll, please?
Alderperson Kastner?
Present.
Alderperson Bailey?
Present.
Alderperson Sarian?
Present, thank you. Item 2, approval of the May 11th, 2022 Finance and Human Resources Committee meeting minutes.
Motion for approval. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 3, election of chairperson and vice chairperson of the Finance and Human Resources Committee.
I make a motion to have the chairperson and vice chairperson remain the same. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 4, discussion and decision regarding approval and acceptance of the City of Greenfield 2021 financial statements and independent auditor's report and Baker Tilly US LLP reporting and insights from the 2021 audit. It's not Ms. Schaefer, it's... Yeah, Wendy Unger.
Wendy Unger from Baker Tilly.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here this evening. You should have received as part of your packets both the audited financial statements, the reporting and insights document, and then a one-page handout, which is what I will use to go through both of those documents at a relatively high level. As I move through the presentation, please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. I'm happy to answer those as we go through. The executive summary starts with just sharing information about our audit process. Very similar to the past, we develop a team. We were actually on site to be able to do the audit, a good portion of the audit this year, but we audit the information that's provided to us by management, including the audited financial statements that you have before you. Those are also prepared by management. As part of that process, we look at the internal controls of the city. We test those controls. We also do
So, excuse me, when you say they're before us, we got them on an email.
Correct. It was
Yes.
emailed.
You know, okay,
Yes, yes. You should have them in your,
right. We don't have
Information.
hard copies, we have them on email, okay.
yes, and there are hard copies coming. It just due to the timing. Those are
Oh.
in process.
Okay.
Again, as part of that, we test internal controls, we test year-end account balances, and we review financial statements for appropriate inclusion of all the disclosures. And then we share that information with you here tonight. Included in the audited statements is the auditor's report. That's the one portion of that document that is ours as your auditors. Continuing, similar to the past, you have received a clean, unmodified opinion. Again, that's the highest level of assurance that you can obtain from us as your auditors. If you look at that opinion, just one thing to note, looks and feels a little bit different. It's in a new format, so when you compare year to year, you are going to see that it's different. The good part about that is that the actual opinion has moved up to the very top, so you can see right away what type of opinion was rendered. The format change was due to a new auditing standard that came out, so that wasn't something Baker Tilly chose to do, but again, content is the same and the end result is also the same. So again, favorable conclusion from the audit process. Before we get into some financial statement highlights, just want to quickly touch on the reporting and insights document that we issued as part of the audit process, reminding you that we utilize that document to communicate any comments or recommendations that might come up as part of the audit process. Nothing that I need to draw your attention to in there except for two items, very similar to past content. One will be there is a continued past adjustment. So those are adjustments that are brought to our attention or found as part of the audit process that management chooses not to make. Similar to the past, we did not make an adjustment for the recording of the premium on the long-term debt for 2021. Keep in mind you issued significant debt. With that debt becomes a premium. It gets recorded in your fund statements, your day-to-day funds, just like any other transaction, but on the top GASB 34 side, the full accrual statements that would get recorded and amortized. over the life of the debt. So again, that was passed, and there is information in that document that shares more information about that. The other item I want to note, and just remind everyone, is there will be a new governmental accounting standard effective for the city for 2022. That's GASB 87. That is the accounting for leases. The long-awaited lease standard is finally here. We did receive some reprieve with COVID, but now this is the year you will need to implement. That will change how leases are accounted for. You will no longer have operating leases. Any lease over a year will get recorded as an asset with a related liability, and then again amortized over the life of that lease. So we will work with management, but the most significant part of that process is inventorying the leases that you have. It goes both from the lessee side and the lessor side, so that information needs to be compiled and evaluated. Materiality does come into play, so depending on the quantity of leases and the dollar amounts, potentially the standard could have no impact, but until you put pen to paper and reach that conclusion, the inventory is where we need to start.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
What do we lease? Copy machines?
That's it. And postal machine? Cop car. We lease one cop car with
Oh, yeah.
So far,
drug money.
nothing's been material so far, but we gotta accumulate that.
That sounds like that's really important.
So again, hopefully no impact. If it is all immaterial when looked at in total, that will not have any significant impact, but just want to remind everybody that that will be effective for 2022 and will get included in the city's statements for 2022. The only other item I do want to just quickly mention that's included in there, I always remind you that there are significant estimates that are included within your financial statements. Just want to remind you of those: compensated absences, depreciation, your OPEB liability, your pension liability, or actually your pension asset, and then your allowances. So just want to remind you of that. Shifting gears to the financial highlight section of the presentation, a couple items to note. I always remind you the management's discussion and analysis. That's the pages 3 through 10 of the document, a very high-level Cliff Note version. Encourage you to take a look at that. Your government-wide statements, those are the statements I mentioned earlier that are on a full accrual basis of accounting. If you look at that, you're going to note significant changes from the previous year. That statement saw a decrease in net position of almost $9 million and saw an increase in expenses of roughly $19 million. Now, again, keep in mind these are full accrual, not the way you manage your organization. Main reasons for those fluctuations: you borrowed $29.9 million, and a lot of that was used for a developer payment. It is not a capital asset, so it's an expense on the city side. So that TID 8 developer payment, again, is the main contributing factor to that increase in expenses and ultimately the decrease in net position. Switching gears to the general fund, just quickly mentioning the operations of that. General fund ended the year very favorably. You had budgeted to use over $900,000 of fund balance. You only used $90,000 of fund balance. So your plan to utilize that amount did not happen. Your revenues came in $329,000 over budget. Part of that is due to some COVID funding, but one of the main contributing factors is ambulance revenue. That was a significant portion of the increase in your public charges for services. The one thing to note, there was a decrease in your investment income compared to budget. Market saw significant loss during 2021, and therefore your investment income actually came in at less than what you had expected. Expenses were $547,000 under budget. So again, a favorable variance there. Main category for that is your public safety category. The fire department came in $126,000 under budget. Your inspection department was $100,000 under budget, and the PD was $80,000 under budget. So those three departments contributed to a good portion of that expenditure saving. So again, the general fund used $90,000 of fund balance, had $9.1 million of fund balance as of the end of the year. Most of that, or $7.7 million, is what's unassigned in that fund. That's your working capital, your contingency money. You have a policy to be within, be 20% or more of your operating budget. That figure represents roughly 25%. So you're in compliance with your policy and a little bit over where you would have expected. Couple other items to note, your sanitary sewer and refuse and recycling funds. Refuse saw an increase in charges of $200,000 along with an increase in expenses of roughly $205,000. So that fund saw a decrease in that position of $24,000. And your sewer saw an increase in revenue of $165,000 and a decrease in expenses of $200,000. Less maintenance work was done in 2021 compared to previous years. And that fund saw a $678,000 increase in its net position. Within your audited statements, there are cash flow statements. Your sewer utility actually added $1.8 million to cash during 2021, and the refuse fund used $108,000. So both of them saw some activity within that cash area. Refuse and recycling is a fund, obviously, to keep an eye on. That operating status operates in the deficit. So it doesn't generate enough revenue from charges to customers to cover bills. So something to keep in mind as you move forward into your budget this year. Lastly, the one last item, just want to quickly mention the long-term debt fund, or the long-term debt footnote. As of the end of the year, the city's long-term obligations were over $121 million. Most of that, 93.1 million, is your debt. So your general obligation debt that's outstanding. A good portion of that is TIF related. 51.88 million of that 93 million is TID. So those are borrowings that will be paid back through TID future increment. Your OPEB liability, so this is your other post-employment benefit liability, was roughly 25 million. And then one other item to note within your debt section, there is a paragraph in the debt footnote. You have the ability to borrow 5% of your equalized value. That equates to a roughly, let me rephrase that. You have the capacity to borrow an additional 88.9 million. So when you take the 88.9 plus the 93 million, you have the total capacity to borrow of roughly $180 million. But again, your ability to borrow is 88.9 million. As I mentioned, you borrowed 29.9 million. You paid down 15 million of principal during 2021 also. Just going to note net position and fund balances. All the fund information is included in your footnotes. I've included the page references for you to look at your convenience. And then lastly, I have included my direct line, my email address. We go through this very quickly, but I am happy to have discussions with any of you to answer any questions or to share any information on our audit process or the audit results. At this point, though, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have currently.
This is essentially our budget that we approved, and
Yeah, I mean, so the good news is that we performed very well last year in one of the most difficult years that we've ever had, that we only used about 10% of the budgeted reserves that we were contemplating, which I think is important for the rating agencies when they see that, because the ERP stuff and the referendum stuff and all of the chaos that was created during that process financially worked out, which is good to get through that, honestly. There will always be concern about debt, but it was encouraging to realize that a significant part of the TID-related debt that we're discussing provided an incredible return on investment to the city, long-term, intermediate, and long-term. TID, is it, I always get it mixed up, 84 South's TID? TID 6. So when we went through the planning process for TID 6, which has still got a couple more things coming that hopefully will come within the next month or so, all of the property in that 40-acre parcel was worth about $7 million, 6.7 to 7.6. I can't remember exactly what the number was, about 7 million. As of this year, this point in time, it's worth 196 million. So the investment that we made in Tin Six, I think I think most would agree was a home run. And it made the city a better place. Some of this other stuff, so the refuse and recycling thing that you said, that, could you go through that one more time? You said that it wasn't meeting its revenue requirements, expenditure requirements.
Right, so I just mentioned that, the refuse and recycling fund, when we look at that and we look at it compared to year over year, that the fund continued to see a decrease in that position. So your,
Balance, but it's.
I'm sorry?
Its balance continues to decline.
Correct, roughly about $20,000 on an annual basis. I believe 2020 was a 20,000-ish decrease, and now another 24,000 during this year. Again, as I mentioned, there was a $108,000 decrease in its cash position. One of the things to keep in mind, though, that decrease in cash position of $108,000 is a result of some capital acquisition. So you used money on hand to do some capital activity, which was about $153,000. But you fund part of your operations with a grant. You get a recycling grant, so that's roughly $124,000. So net, again, you should see roughly a $50,000 increase in cash on an annual basis when you're not doing capital. But if you're going to continue to use money to do capital, which makes sense.
And it's still,
Has that grant funding changed?
it was
Always
once,
about the same?
it was once 117,000, and it was 111,000, and now it's
24.
120,000. It had declined, so it fluctuated.
A little
And it was
bit,
gonna
yeah.
get eliminated 1 year or 2 years, and it didn't, thank the Lord, because they still require that we
yeah.
recycle. So, because of the issues that we talk about during our budget with regard to capital equipment, right? So leaf collection is part of the recycling plan, right? So the leaf collectors and the stuff that we do, those purchases come out of this fund. So to hear that the overall balance is declining a little bit is because it's used basically as a savings account to buy the stuff that we need for recycling, and leaves and debris and all that stuff is part of that.
Not necessarily a reoccurring expense, so it doesn't seem
Not
like
a
we're
recurring
operating in a
expense, and then
big-
we have the recycling center, right?
Yeah.
That was not doing so well, and we had a new building, a new shed that we built, we didn't hire somebody to do that. So it's, when you said it, it's like, oh my God, your recycling program is, it's losing money hand over, it's not losing money hand over fist. The
No.
expenditures were
No,
anticipated.
just need to keep an eye on the fund to make sure that it's doing
Can't
what,
just be buying new buildings every year, but
right, correct.
we do plan for those things. Does that make sense?
Was a scary comment.
It sounded bad.
Yeah, it doesn't
wasn't
sound
as
good.
bad.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you.
So just one comment that I want to make is that with the bond rating, last year when we went through Moody's, some of the metrics, for a number of reasons, were getting a little kind of questionable, right? I think a lot of it had to do with the use of fund balance and debt, and I think playing the more longer term, taking a longer term outlook at it, the fact that we didn't use much fund balance, that our TIDs are performing well, are both things that will help ensure, hopefully, that our bond rating remains where it is. The COVID times are tough times for everyone, right? Other thing I just wanted to point out too is the ARPA money, which is a component here. Again, ultimately you folks make the decision, but it would be my opinion that be directed at capital items that are difficult to fund in our normal levy. And I know we've ordered a fire truck, and we're looking at DPW trucks and all sorts of stuff, right? But the ARPA money that remains, and I can't remember exactly what that balance is.
Couple million?
It's a couple, it's like 2.5, 3, 5, something like that. When the budget, and we just got the calendar for this year's budget, we're starting that right now. A portion of that will be presented within the budget for capital expenditures. Depends on what our growth is this year. I don't know what our growth is going to be. I'm not sure. Growth controls the levy, right? So, okay, that's all I got. So, thank you very much.
Item 5. Item 5.
I will make
Oh, thank you.
a motion to approve and accept the City of Greenfield financial statement provided by Baker Tilly.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 5, discussion and decision to approve an agreement with a collective agency to collect non-ambulance debts. Ms. Schaefer.
Hi. We had been using Frank's Adjustment Bureau out of Racine for over 20 years, and the owner had decided to retire. And they did the collections for us for if we had grass cuttings or some of the snow cleaning up and that or accidents, our personal property taxes. They did the collections of those items for us. So we need to get a new collection agency to take over those for us. Two of the companies, the two agreements I have before you are ones that we are currently using. Our former ambulance billings company used these two. So I reached out to them to get contracts from them. I am recommending certified recovery of the two that I've provided to you. A city attorney has reviewed them, and he's okay with either one. We don't send a lot to collection of this type. Majority of it is our personal property.
Sewer bills?
No, sewer bills, if they're delinquent, go on the tax bills.
Oh,
And so
good
does-
point.
And grass cuttings and snow and sidewalks
It's-
typically get applied to the tax bill as a special
They
charge.
can.
They should. Why
If-
aren't they?
So then,
If they're owner-related, yes, we can put them on the tax bill. If it's something that's not owner-related, then we can't put it on the tax bill.
So if we put it on the tax bill, the county will make us whole for the debt then?
Yes, in theory.
So just explain to me what owner-related and non-owner-related mean?
Non-owner-related would be more the, like an accident.
And we don't usually have many of those, right?
Not anymore. We used to, if we had to replace a fence someplace or a light pole, we would be billing that person or that person's insurance company. Sometimes the insurance companies pay, other times the person doesn't have insurance, so we have those items to go to collection.
But the typical grass cuttings and
Grass cut,
sidewalk
yes.
clearings and and then houses in your neighborhoods that people, might be in foreclosure or something, that stuff gets
That
on the
would
tax
go
bill.
on the tax
That's not
bill,
what we're
correct.
talking about. These other ones,
Who you
a
recommend?
tree offense, a pole, those kinds of things often we
certified recovery.
Certified recovery out of Eau Claire is what I'm recommending of the two contracts we have.
the volume
An
for these
A+
collections is
rating.
extremely small.
A+ rating.
I would pick,
Soprano didn't quote.
it doesn't matter which one. I mean, the reality is that the amount of recoveries that this company would go after are remarkably small, but you do need somebody in the event that you need somebody. So,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
and then the other part of this is,
With certified recovery, that one?
Yeah.
so the other part of this too is that you might say, well, these folks are in Eau Claire. In the digital world, it doesn't really matter. So, where they are.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 6, discussion and decision regarding agreement CSAC, Society of European Stage Authors and Composers, for the authorized use of musical compositions on city premises. Mr. Jaquish.
This is a kind of an annual agreement. This actually allows for the performances, usually at the AMP concerts, use of music for fitness classes, water aerobics, and things of that nature. There are actually 3 such companies around the country, two of which are annually paid. Those don't require an agreement. This one particularly does. So it's usually just a use of and playing of music, whether it be at the AMP or in recreational activities.
We have to do it,
I-
along with the other two, so.
Yeah, we've gotten away with it for a long time.
We've never gotten away with it.
So if we pay this, can we then post things on Facebook and use the music?
No, that does not include Facebook. Like when we had the live event, that's a different licensing.
Because Facebook goes crazy if you use music.
We found that out.
I did too.
Yeah, when we were doing our Christmas celebration, we were playing, I can't remember.
At the
if it was
very end,
Frosty
there
the
is-
Snowman or something.
Yeah.
and It was being broadcast as a live event on Facebook, and then it got terminated because the bots in Facebook picked up the
Music.
music.
Frosty the Snowman, yeah.
Yeah.
So they blocked the audio, basically.
Yeah, it was-
Poor kids.
You only have a couple
So
minutes,
if
so if
we
you're gonna do
wanted
it, just
that-
do it really, really fast.
So if we wanted that, we would have to pay some other agreement?
A different
with
agreement,
Facebook.
actually, a whole different, probably through Facebook, I'm guessing, and other music licensing agencies that probably have the rights on Facebook or other social medias. So this is for like live performances, you know, or use of recorded music for like fitness classes and things of that nature.
Okay.
Or if someone's playing a radio that's playing music in their office, this is included in that. This is being
Or
technically
music
being
when you put
broadcast.
somebody on hold.
You put somebody on
the
hold,
phone
and you
system.
hear that scratchy music that's incoherent, incomprehensible.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to
I'm-
approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks. Item 7, approve fund transfers between Engineering Division capital improvement accounts. Mr. Katz isn't, oh, yeah.
We're just going to be moving some money between capital accounts, primarily to create a couple accounts for some projects that we're going to be getting started on. One is a reconstruction of a neighborhood in Bruce's district. One is the Power Line Trail, which we got grants for, but we still need a little bit of money, seed money in there. And another one, we're creating an account to pay our share of the Beloit Road work that's starting, so. And we're closing an account, so.
Okay.
We have some components with you're looking at me like, do you
I'm
want to
not-
explain what we had for, you were? No, you weren't.
I'm not looking at you like anything.
Okay, I thought it was
I'm
like,
looking over my glasses, which might be a,
so with
motion-
Beloit, it's mostly other people's
Sidewalks
money,
and
but we have to do
intersections.
sidewalks.
Yeah, Beloit Road, we're gonna be paying for some sidewalk work and could participate in the cost of the traffic signal, because it's on a city street and a county road, so.
motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
Beloit Road starts on the 20th, by the way.
We'll post
You
it
probably
on-
know that, they don't.
We'll post it on our Facebook page if we have one.
But don't include music. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 8, discussion and decision to approve a grant agreement with the State of Wisconsin Department of Health Services. Battalion Chief Weber.
Thank you. Good evening. This, apologies, this actually would have been great to go with the other agreements last month. Similar agreement, but we applied for grant funding earlier this year and were awarded it, $22,500. What this grant allows us to do is receive referrals from our partner hospitals, St. Luke's, Froedtert, and Ascension hospitals. Once they have a stroke patient that's discharged home in Greenfield, we will be able to do a home visit with one of our community paramedics, make sure that they're taking their medications, make sure their home is safe. And the goal is basically to reduce 911 calls, prevent them from going back to the hospital in a readmission. The nice thing is we do this already and we don't get paid for it with existing staffing. This allows us to be reimbursed $300 through this grant every time we do a home visit.
That's a good idea.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 9, discussion and decision on amendment number 3 to intergovernmental agreement for emergency medical services.
And this is just a change in the agreement due to the current county executive giving us more funding for EMS services for the whole county. So it was at 1.5 in the old agreement. This new agreement, it will now be $3 million, distributed through all EMS agencies throughout the county.
It results in very little money to us.
Right. About an extra.
Keeping it all, he's putting more money into the system, but he's essentially keeping it to build the back room at the county.
It sounded good.
Well, I mean, it sounds good. So, I mean, just in historical perspective, when I was the ICC chair, and this was a long time ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, I think, maybe 6 years ago, we, as host communities for the paramedic program, the real dollars that we all collectively needed was about $6 to $9 million. And every time we would ask for that, it would seemingly be cut by the last county executive, and the one before that too. Actually, Walker cut it, or he didn't cut it. He was going to cut it, but he didn't at the last moment. Ably actually did cut it. So it's nice to see the commitment by the county moving in a positive direction. The unfortunate thing is we receive less money than we did 10 years ago. And part of that is because of Greendale. We helped Greendale create a paramedic program. We helped train them. And then the county turned around and took some of our money and gave it to them, which was not what the deal was at the time, but someone made that deal along the way. So this is good. I support it because it's another 10 or 20,000. I can't remember exactly what it is. But it's not anywhere close to what our cost is to be in the program at all.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Gotta make more house calls.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the reality is that the medical providing industry, the healthcare industry, incorporates local EMS and paramedics now. It's part of the healthcare system. In the old days, it was just basically a van to get somebody, you know, in a stable condition to a healthcare provider. So the new model is exactly as he explained it, right? The good news is we're getting some money for it. 22,000 isn't much. That's what, probably 100 visits, not even 100 visits, 70, 80 visits, something like that. But it's something, because we do it anyways.
Okay.
And ultimately, it saves us money by doing it, because it's less expensive than back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
And we save lives.
And we save lives, which is the whole goal of everything, right? So that's good.
Item 10, approval of schedules of disbursements in the amount of $7,786,348.97.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item 11, approval of mileage reimbursements in the amount of $263.89.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item 12, approval of the April 2022 investments and reinvestments.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Just one quick comment with regard to that. You see that reinvestments and investments and reinvestments. The good news with interest rates going up, she made a comment about interest rate revenue, the money that we have in our CDs and our in our government account, whatever, what's that called again, the government, what?
LGIP.
The LGIP account, which is where we can put our money. Interest rates there have been crazy low for a long time. They did bump about a year and a half ago. Right now, we're getting 0.3% in those accounts. But even up to 1% or 2% or 3% is some serious money with the amount of assets that we have there. So that should be, if there's one good thing about higher interest rates, it's that it helps us with a better revenue source, so stronger revenue source. Getting 0.3% isn't good return.
We can pay out that 7 million in taxes to the other communities quick, as opposed to hanging on to it because we make money doing that.
You could say stuff like that. Well, it used to be that you would hold the money as long as you possibly could when the interest rates were high.
I thought it was like
right? There's no
600,000 we were
incentive
making.
to provide any tax receipt to someone early when you're getting a good return, while it's, even if it's in a short term at holding place account. But yeah, you're right. Of course, you never admit that when they call and wonder where their money is, because they want it to go in their account to collect interest when the interest is high.
By state statute, we have certain dates we have to make those payments to them.
But
That's
we
why
would
there's,
never do it early if we didn't have to.
we pay it on the day it's due, and that's why the AP was so high at the 7 million, because we had payouts in May for those.
Okay. Item 13, discussion and decision to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.85 1E to consider the following: A, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session.
Motion to go into closed session.
Would you call the roll, please?
Alderperson Kastner?
Aye.
Alderperson Bailey?
Aye.
Alderperson Sarian?
Aye. Committee to go into closed session at 6:37 PM.
And pausing this, so. Go into open session at 7:12 by Bailey,
Yes, it was, and I'll second that.
by Kastner.
Okay. So, item 14, decision regarding City of Greenfield and Greenfield Police Association labor negotiations.
Motion to proceed as directed.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 15, items for future agenda.
I thought the cell tower agreement would be on this agenda.
It's not done yet. It will be at some point whenever we get, I told Jeff that it has to get approved. There's a cell tower at the turf. So when we got the turf for $1, Alderperson Kastner is very well aware of this, we received a billboard with an expiring lease and a cell tower with an expiring lease. As part of the deal with the state, I mean, those are assets, right? You know, you're talking about leases and what their value is, right? So when the state got rid of that piece of property that they didn't need to get rid of, they gave us 2 leases that have value, okay? Which is not something the state usually does. The agreement with the state was that the land that they were selling us for $1 would be used only as a park. It would never be sold commercially, right? We couldn't buy it for $1 and sell it for more money later. The land itself was probably worth $300,000 to $500,000 an acre. Okay, so it was, we got like $500,000 to $1 million worth of land for $1. And we also inherited 2 revenue streams that were at the end of their leases that we could negotiate. Which the idea was that those revenue streams would support whatever park was there, understanding that parks are tough things to keep going. Now, a lot of the stuff that happened with the DOT in those, are we in open session?
Yeah,
And it's not agenda.
this isn't on the
It's
agenda
not
either.
agenda,
I was
so,
just asking it to be on the
yeah,
agenda.
so the goal was that that stuff had to go back to the park, right? We had hired counsel, which, just so you know, and this is what Alderperson Kastner is getting at, we hired counsel to negotiate a new cell tower lease. And the cost of that counsel was to be borne by the people that had the stuff on the cell tower, not by us. A lease agreement, I think, has been arrived in principle, which should go on the next Finance Committee agenda or Common Council agenda for approval. Does that make sense? With regard to the billboard, that will probably also be coming in the future too, because there's a whole bunch of options with that.
A little more. Item 16.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, meeting is adjourned at 7:16 PM.
Wait.